Imagine this: 168 strangers walk into an empire of millions and win. They kidnap the emperor in half an hour and flip the whole system upside down. That's not a movie plot. That's exactly what happened to the Inca Empire. So was it just Europeans were stronger, end of story? Not even close. This was a 4,000-year technology gap crashing into one moment. And behind the guns and steel, there were germs, geography, and internal chaos. In this episode, we'll break down why 168 Spaniards could crush an empire, and more importantly, what this story says about power, technology, and fate. Let's start with the Inca Empire, or Tawantinsuyu, the land of four quarters. In just about a century, the Inca built a gigantic empire along the Andes. They connected mountains with stone roads and hanging bridges like spiderwebs. Messengers ran those roads, passing information across hundreds of kilometers. Their stone architecture was so good, Spanish buildings later collapsed first. They mastered terraced farming, irrigation, and high-altitude agriculture. They even performed skull surgeries and tracked the solar year with precision. On the surface, this looks like a super advanced civilization. But under the surface, the Inca were still in a kind of extended Stone Age. No steel, no iron, no wheels, no horses. That matters a lot in war. For writing, they had the quipu, knotted strings instead of written letters. Great for numbers, taxes, and logistics. Not so great for long, complex texts. Now let's look at who's coming to knock on their door. The Spanish. 16th century Spain was fresh off the Reconquista, an 800-year war. They had professional soldiers, battle-hardened nobles, and unemployed warriors. The New World was the perfect outlet. New land, new glory, and hopefully gold. So why did Spain have guns, steel, and horses while the Inca did not? A big part of the answer is geography. Eurasia versus the Americas. Eurasia stretches east-west across similar latitudes and climates. Once a good crop or a useful animal appears, it spreads sideways pretty easily. Techniques for farming, warfare, and metalworking travel with them. The Americas are different, a long north-south continent with wild climate changes. Tropical jungle, high mountains, deserts, and cold plains all stack vertically. A crop or weapon that works in one zone often fails in the next. Now add animals to that picture. Eurasia had horses, cattle, pigs, sheep, goats. Horses were not just transport. They were four-legged tanks in pre-modern war. The Inca had llamas and alpacas, useful but not for cavalry charges. No horses means no mounted warriors, no shock cavalry tactics, no fast raids. Next, metal. Eurasia entered the Iron Age over 2,500 years before Pizarro. Centuries of trial and error created steel swords, armor, and complex weapons. By the 1500s, Spain had Toledo steel, some of the best blades in the world. The Inca were excellent metalworkers, but mostly in gold, silver, and bronze. Their weapons were still stone clubs, slings, and obsidian blades. Against stone and wood, steel armor is basically cheat code level protection. And then came gunpowder, another Eurasian hand-me-down. Firearms in the 1500s were slow, noisy, and not very accurate. But if you've never seen a gun, the sound and smoke alone can break your nerve. Spanish tactics used all of this: steel, horses, and guns in one shock package. They were also veterans of countless wars, from Moors to rival Christian kingdoms. The Inca, by contrast, had just 1 century of imperial warfare behind them. If weapons decided the battles, germs decided the entire war. Long before Pizarro met the Inca, a silent invader arrived: smallpox. Again, the key difference starts with animals. Many major human diseases came from domesticated animals in Eurasia. Cows, pigs, and chickens donated us smallpox, measles, and influenza, among others. That sounds terrible, and it was, but it also forced Eurasian populations to adapt. Century after century, waves of epidemics killed the most vulnerable people. Survivors passed down genes and immune responses that could handle these diseases. The Americas had far fewer domesticated animals and almost no big herd animals. That meant fewer animal viruses jumping into humans and becoming new plagues. In other words, the Inca had never been trained by repeated pandemics. When smallpox finally arrived from the Caribbean and Central America, it spread through trade routes and communities the Inca didn't even see. By the 1520s, it reached the Inca heartland and killed Emperor Huayna Capac. His chosen heir died as well, probably of the same disease. That double loss triggered a brutal civil war between two princes. Huascar and Cusco, Atahualpa in the north, both claiming the right to rule. Years of civil war killed tens of thousands and split the elite into rival camps. When Pizarro finally showed up in 1532, the empire was already bleeding out. Spain did not just attack a healthy superpower, it walked into a sick, divided one. After winning the Civil War, Atahualpa was on top of the world. He camped near Cajamarca with tens of thousands of troops at his command. Then came a strange report: a tiny group of bearded men with metal skin. Less than 200 Spaniards led by Francisco Pizarro had crossed the Andes. Atahualpa didn't feel threatened. Why would he? He had an army, they had a circus. He agreed to meet them in the town square, bringing only an unarmed escort. The Spaniards, terrified by the Inca numbers, planned a desperate ambush. They hid cannons, cavalry, and infantry around the square, waiting for a signal. A friar stepped forward reading a declaration demanding Christian submission. Atahualpa, who had never seen a book, examined it and threw it aside. The Spaniards took that as the sign. Cannons roared, horses charged, steel flashed. The unarmed Inca escort panicked, crushed by their own people and Spanish blades. In about half an hour, thousands lay dead. The Spaniards lost almost no one. Most importantly, Pizarro grabbed Atahualpa alive in the chaos. With the emperor in chains, the Inca command structure basically froze. Atahualpa tried to buy his freedom with the one thing the Spaniards loved: gold. He promised to fill a room once with gold and twice with silver up to his height. For months, treasures from across the empire poured into Cajamarca. The Spaniards took the ransom, but never truly planned to let him go. Rumors of rescue armies and internal Spanish jealousy sealed Atahualpa's fate. He converted to Christianity to avoid burning, then was executed by strangling. The empire didn't fall in one day, but from this moment, it was dying on the inside. To control the empire, the Spaniards installed a puppet emperor, 17-year-old Manco Inca. At first, Manco actually cooperated. He thought the Spaniards would restore stability. But the Pizarro brothers left in Cusco treated him like property, not a king. They seized treasure, humiliated nobles, and insulted Inca traditions. One brother even kidnapped Manco's royal wife. That was the breaking point. Manco escaped Cusco and rallied Inca loyalists under a single banner. In 1536, he launched the largest rebellion the Andes had ever seen. Tens of thousands surrounded Cusco, trapping fewer than 200 Spaniards inside. The siege lasted 10 months. Spanish sources say they ran out of food and hope. Inca General Quiso Yupanqui ambushed several Spanish relief troops. For a moment, it looked like the Spanish invasion might actually collapse. But geography and technology still mattered. On open plains, cavalry dominated. Quiso Yupanqui was killed in one of these open field battles. Without him, the rebellion started losing momentum. Meanwhile, smallpox surged again inside the Inca ranks. And some rival tribes long angry at Inca domination sided with the Spaniards. Surrounded by enemies and illness, Manco dissolved the army and withdrew. He retreated deep into the jungle and built a hidden city, Vilcabamba. From there, the Inca fought a guerrilla war for 36 long years. It wasn't enough to reclaim the empire, but enough to haunt the Spaniards. Vilcabamba fell in 1572. The last Inca ruler, Tupac Amaru, was captured and executed. With his death, the political Inca state ended, but not the Inca people. Ironically, the Inca weren't the only ones destroyed by the conquest. The Spanish conquerors soon began fighting themselves. Francisco Pizarro and his partner Almagro quarreled over who deserved Cusco. Their feud exploded into civil war. Yes, the conquerors had their own civil war too. Pizarro won and had Almagro executed. 3 years later, Almagro's son assassinated Pizarro in his own palace. Pizarro's brothers also died miserably, one killed in battle, one executed for rebellion. In the end, the men who conquered an empire couldn't even rule themselves. So why did the Inca Empire fall? Let's wrap it all up. First, weapons. Steel armor and cavalry crushed stone weapons and foot soldiers. Second, germs. Smallpox killed leaders, shattered social order, and fueled civil war. Third, division. The empire tore itself apart right when Spain arrived. Fourth, information. Spain had writing, maps, and centuries of war manuals. The Inca had the quipu, powerful but limited for complex warfare knowledge. Fifth, timing. Pizarro arrived at the precise moment the empire was weakest. Was Spanish bravery a factor? Sure, but not the deciding one. The real drivers were geography, biology, technology, and political chaos. In other words, history wasn't shaped by heroes, but by systems. And when two systems evolve separately for thousands of years, their first meeting is rarely a fair fight. The fall of the Inca is one of the clearest examples of this harsh truth. And it reminds us, technology gaps, disease gaps, and information gaps still matter today. Power isn't just about strength. It's about what built that strength over centuries. And when two worlds meet with uneven systems, history tends to repeat itself. The Inca never stood a chance. Not because they were weak, but because the world had shaped them differently. And that's the true story behind the fall of the Inca Empire. Not a tale of bravery versus savagery, but systems versus systems. And in this clash, the result was already written long before Pizarro arrived.